I'm Fion Wright, your China Dream coach for entrepreneurs and executives. Welcome to Season 1 of the Your China Dream Virtual Summit. In this episode, I talked to Ashley Galina Dudarenok, who's a best-selling author, a founder of a digital marketing agency and a training company, a podcaster, vlogger, and keynote speaker. Her energy is absolutely contagious. So let's hear her powerful yet simple advice on how to make it in the Chinese market.
Hey guys, Ashley here. My number one tip to realize your China dream is, if you're not yet in China, move to China. Learn the language. Be there, breathe it in, respect the culture, understand it before moving forward. Once you are in that market, a lot of opportunities are gonna come. If you're already in China, make sure you're staying flexible, you keep learning, and you are not falling into that ego game that you already understand it. China is never the same. Every month it's different. If you are already learning non-stop, then it is next level. Play big. China likes big. You cannot impact a lot of people if you play small. So play big and look into third and fourth tier cities for your next development and your next move. China Dream is awesome and you can realize it.
Thanks for coming in to talk to me today, Ashley.
Thank you so much, Fiona. It's fantastic to be here.
Likewise, it's the first time we're face to face, so it's great to finally meet.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to start with, for the people who are watching who don't know your work or haven't heard of you, which is probably not that many, could you do maybe a quick self-introduction, who you are, what it is that you do?
Right, so I am a serial entrepreneur, I'm a podcaster, a vlogger, I run the world's largest vlog about Chinese social media, I'm a book author, I'm a professional speaker. So basically, I'm all about China. I've been in China since 2005. I lived in mainland, I've been living in Hong Kong for the past many years, and it was always about marketing and China and understanding Chinese consumers for me. So I started out in corporate jobs in mainland China, I moved to Hong Kong, I started my own businesses. Right now I run a digital agency which is focusing on social media in mainland China. Right now I own a training company where we come in and train top executives of big corporations as well as their marketing teams on how to handle the China market and Chinese agencies, or do social media or marketing or market entry by themselves. And besides that, I do a lot of public speaking and education. I blog a lot on LinkedIn, on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, etc. So that's in short. And my book about China is also out. I've got 2 more books coming out later this year.
So I'd like to dig a little bit into, like, why did you come to China in the first place? Like, why China? And then why did you stay? And you're a little bit different than some of the other people I've talked to in that you were in China for a while and then you moved to Hong Kong. So that's a little bit different. So one, why did you come? Why did you stay in China? And then why did you move to Hong Kong?
Absolutely, that's a beautiful question. So actually I was born in Asia. I'm Russian originally, and I was born in the Russian Far East. In a place called Vladivostok, which is bordering on China, North Korea, and Japan. So from early on, I've been exposed to our socialist neighbors, and I loved them a lot. Well, in fact, I felt that it was a very interesting place. I witnessed how fast they build up infrastructure, because the first foreign country that I visited as a kid was China, right? And long story short, because I traveled out of Russia, I studied in New Zealand and England. At 17, I decided to go to mainland China, and that was a choice for me personally between India and China, seeing the potential of these 2 economies in the coming, let's say, 20-30 years. So I decided to come to China, and the only person I knew was actually a teacher of my friend who happened to be from Chongqing. So there I was, 17 years old, landing in Chongqing. I couldn't even pronounce the name of that city. I tried to find that city on Wikipedia and nothing came up. There was no Wikipedia page in 2005 for Chongqing. So I arrived in Chongqing believing that that was a village. And I was completely shocked to figure out that population-wise, it's the largest city in the world with 34 million people. So that was my, let's say, first move to China. And originally the idea was, because I graduated with let's say, in Russia we call it golden medal, so basically with honors. So I could enter any university within China without entrance exams and on some program. So I thought that the first year, the only prerequisite that I had was the language. So I had to speak obviously Chinese if I go to Chinese school, or I had to speak German if I wanted to study in a German school. So I thought the first year I could be in Chongqing, I could study the language, and later on I could go and do business in Beijing. So that was the original plan. But after a year in Chongqing and visiting Beijing and Beijing universities on multiple occasions, I decided that Chongqing was a cooler place. It was a municipality directly sponsored by the government of China. It was developing like crazy. There was so much international and internal interest in developing and propelling it forward. They just built the university town with crazy equipment and crazy stuff, and yeah, and then I arrived in Beijing and I see those worn down buildings and leaking ceilings, and exchange students not being treated as nicely as in Chongqing. So that was the reason why I decided to stay there. I stayed in Chongqing for 4+ years. I did my language course, obviously. I did my business degree in 3 instead of 4 years. And then I was thinking, okay, what's next? Do I really want to stay in China for the next 20 years, or do I want to do something else? I applied for the Quality Migrant Admission Scheme when the government of Hong Kong invites talented individuals, they call it, it's called Quality Migrant, right? To come to Hong Kong to work, to study, to set up businesses, to basically add value to this place. And I did that. I arrived to Hong Kong and I stayed here. At first I worked for a company and later on I set up my own firm. Why Hong Kong? Because it's still linked to China, but it's not mainland China. So for foreigners, it's a much better place to live, to be, to stay. And I love it dearly, and for me it's home. My husband is here, my home is here, and I love it dearly. I'm applying to become a permanent, not only resident, but a permanent citizen of this fantastic territory, truth be told.
So before you came to China, I'd love to dig into if you had any assumptions about what China was like and how those assumptions were challenged, how your understanding of China has changed since you've been here. And also then if you can reference maybe, because I know you work with clients from all over the world that are trying to understand China, like what are some of the misconceptions that people generally tend to have, and what is it actually like?
Right, so that's a fantastic question, because when I got to China I was still 17 years old. I was a kid. And my first encounter with China was when I was, let's say, 7, 8, 9 years old. It was I mean, in Vladivostok we always had Asians, so it's not that I haven't seen Asians before, but China was a very peculiar place because it was a lot of people, it was dirty, it was noisy, and we went to China to shop because we virtually bought almost all our daily necessities and clothes from China. And Vladivostok is 2 hours drive from China's northern border. And basically mainland Chinese in the 90s, they built a city called Suifenghe. They built a city right at the border. And that city from a tiny village grew into a metropolis by Russian standards, huge. And that place was pretty much serving Russians in terms of shopping and all other necessities. So that place was like a Disneyland. You come and you shop and everything was cheap and abundant. That was not the case in early Russia, in early 2000s or late 90s. That was not the case. So of course it was a very interesting place. Of course we were also influenced by our neighbors. I mean, we celebrate Chinese New Year. We actually celebrate it in the Russian Far East. So there were a lot of links. We had a lot of Chinese restaurants and we had, as I said, a lot of people. So I had some assumptions, but they were more assumptions based on what I've seen as a kid, and I thought that it's a dirty place, it's a place where it's just cheap, it's a place with rude people because I couldn't understand them. I did not speak their language. They spoke Russian badly, but they were also very hardworking. I always knew, and we acknowledged it so much, that Chinese people, those hustlers, those business women, because there were a lot of women in business and trade, right? They were so hardworking. They actually learned our language to be able to communicate. So as a kid, I had sort of mixed feelings. On the one hand, having something from China always meant cheap and probably, it wasn't like the most glamorous place to be at. But on the other hand, there was a lot of respect that they were living better than us in many aspects, that they could build infrastructure better than us, that they were, hustling, that they were so hardworking. So that was the I think, heritage with which I came to China. And to be honest, when I arrived in China at 17, I was not a fan of dragons. kung fu, tai chi chuan, or all other things that many foreigners that move to China at such a tender age tend to follow. I was not a fan of that at all. For me, it was number one, a decision. I thought it has potential. Number two, my boyfriend at the time also studied Chinese, and it was the place we could go together. So probably the second reason was the biggest. But that's what drove me to mainland China. Arriving there was a complete stereotype. My stereotypes were just torn apart because I saw a very different side of China. I saw real China, because Chongqing in 2006 was a place where people, many people were wealthy, but majority were still lower middle class. I could see a lot of villages. I could see bang bang men. Right now, probably you don't see them, in major cities in China. But I saw bang bang men, the people with a bamboo stick that help you carry your groceries for 2 to 3 renminbi. They just walk with you from supermarket and help you carry all those groceries. It's amazing. And those guys living on the streets and stuff. So I saw very different sides to China. A lot of things I loved. China taught me how to be patient. China taught me how to stand up for yourself. Because in China, if you don't fight for that cab, it's going to be taken. And again, this is China, Chongqing in 2005, 6, 7, 8, etc. Right now, a lot of first-tier cities, again, are completely different people. You cannot generalize. For me, China is not one market or one economy or one tagline or one stereotype or box. It is really like Europe. It's a collection of so many markets and so many mentalities and cultures and languages. Just like Europe, you will never speak the same way with a guy from Finland, with a guy from Spain. They're completely different, and you cannot generalize and say Europe is A, B, C, D. So that's what China is. And in terms of the foreigners, when they come to China, be it businesses or let's say moving for professional reasons to mainland China, a lot of them still have old school stereotypes that it is cheap, it is complicated. It's all about if you give them foreign products, they're just gonna buy it. It's no big deal. Though this stereotype is now already changing, everybody knows that China is complicated. So that's common sense. Everybody knows it's complicated, it's different. But there's still this underlying feeling that China is cheap and people are stupid and they're not very sophisticated. So as long as you know how to play by the rules or bend the rules or what the rules are, you can still sell them some okay stuff. You don't need to be excellent. Well, in fact, in my view, Chinese consumers are the most sophisticated in the world. They want it cheap, fast, good, and tailored to them. So these are some of the things. And of course, the most intelligent and global and big companies in the world, they already know that, they understand that, and they also know that the longer you wait your China entry to enter the market, the more expensive it's going to become. So it is already an extremely expensive market. You cannot take the whole market or even part of it by storm with very limited budgets. You cannot just show up, right? But at the same time, the longer you wait, the more expensive it's going to become. And the opportunity and the future is really in China. For most of the businesses that we work with, international firms or even medium-sized companies with a strong footprint back home, for them, a lot of their business is actually mainland China business. So global brands selling sneakers, 60% of their earnings come from China. Some cosmetic brands, right? Again, most of their money comes from the luxury brands. 70% of their global business comes one way or another from Chinese consumers, even if they are not consuming within the country, right? So all these realities, all those shifting epicenters are already in motion. And it's exciting to see more and more people getting on board with this message. And I'm really excited to see how will people react when they realize that China is no longer a follower or the place to just sell your products, but it is a place that you need to follow, you need to learn from. In terms of new retail, in particular, this is the topic very close to my heart. And technology, they might not be good from bringing products from 0 to 1, but 1 to market is their absolute specialty. So that would be very interesting for me to see how people react to that. In my mind, it takes too long for people to change their stereotypes, but they will be forced by the by the reality to accept it faster and wake up.
Over your 4.5 years in Chongqing and then now 8 years in Hong Kong, what would you say are some of the more difficult challenges that you've come across, the obstacles that you've come into, and how did you overcome them?
So personally?
Both, yeah. So both personally and on a business side.
So personally, I think it's that resistance to China culture. Chinese culture is very, very strong. When you move to China, you don't have a choice, but you need to be, assimilated. You need to get it into your system, and you need to become Chinese. Those people, in my view, that are able to take that into their system and live with it and make it part of their identity become successful, because you can learn so many amazing things from that culture and those people and it's so valuable. Those people that constantly reject the change and reject the reality they live in are going to suffer, are going to get grumpy, gloomy, and eventually are going to leave very unhappy. Or stay and be even more miserable. So that was my challenge at the very beginning, because I was not necessarily very receptive to the culture. I observed it, but I didn't want to, take it in. And then at one point, you just need to let it go, and you need to fight for your camp, and you need to speak louder. And even right now, I speak really, really loudly. And a lot of people feel that, okay, that's just Ashley. This is Ashley, but this is Ashley from Chongqing. If you want to speak in the restaurant in China, or in Chongqing in particular, you need to shout. And some habits, they just don't disappear. So I believe, a much better, more kick-ass version of myself in China the moment I allowed this Chineseness to get into myself. In terms of business challenges, you need to understand that it is very much relationship-built society. But for me, it wasn't a challenge. I think it's more a challenge for Western, for Westerners that move there. For me, Russia is also relationship-based. So you can call it связи. In Russia, it's called связи. In China, it's called 关系. In the West, we call it also relationships or circles, etc., classes. That was not a big change for me, but understanding how it actually impacts everything, how to maintain that network, and how to do it not from you cannot do it purely from the business standpoint. You need to maintain it from the friendly, genuine place, and then it works. So that was also fantastic learning. In terms of moving to Hong Kong, in Hong Kong everything is much more straightforward. Hong Kong is such an easy place. If there's a rule, if there is a list with 10 tick boxes, if you tick all of those boxes, you're going to get it done. So it's very clear, it's the common law is here, rules are very transparent, there's no bribes, there are circles. A lot of people still feel that Hong Kong is so open. There are circles, there are guanxi, it's actually potentially even more difficult to get in certain circles because people here are so selective. Yeah, in China, being a foreigner, you have so many advantages. Everybody wants to be friends, everybody wants to speak language, practice English, etc. So, but yeah, that's the advantage of Hong Kong. And in terms of challenges, okay, in mainland China, if people tell you something cannot be done, you shall go back and ask, how can it be done? There's always a way. But in Hong Kong, if somebody tells you it cannot be done, most of the times, no matter what you do, whether you jump on the table, where you knock with your hand and palms and then scream in tears, things will not be done either way. So that's a little bit where it is. This is, in my view, what's preventing Hong Kong from going to the next level. Because in modern society, in modern world, in modern economy, in this digitalization, in this age of innovation, you need to move fast. And your rules cannot change so fast. So if people do not fit into your tick boxes, it is a problem. China allows, and the government allows things to happen, whatever you want, up to a point when they say that's it, no more, and these are the regulations. In Hong Kong, before you can do stuff, they tell you that cannot be done. So that's how I see that.
With your two companies, which are training industry and digital marketing, how did you come upon those niches? Like, how did you decide this is the place where I can really add value, this is what I'm good at, this is the business I want to set up? How did you decide that?
Oh, that was not a straightforward journey, I can tell you. So I worked in a corporate world before, but soon realized it wasn't for me. So I wanted to either basically change to another role, go back to marketing, but that would mean in Hong Kong that I have to spend 3 weeks a month outside of Hong Kong, traveling to all the other crazy Southeast Asian destinations. That wasn't really for me because I just had a new boyfriend that time who's now my husband, and I was just like, really, I don't want to do that. I want to enjoy Hong Kong. So I said, okay, what is an alternative? I can start my own business. So that time business was like, okay, what can I do? I even thought of moving to Myanmar and going to Burma to set up a business. But I said, okay, Hong Kong, China, I really know China, why not? And a client of mine, an ex-client of mine, came to me and said, I've got a consulting project for you. That time, that project would pay half a year of my expenses. And I remembered my father's advice. My dad is an extremely smart man. He is the smartest person I know. He's a walking encyclopedia. He told me multiple times that business needs to start with business, not with an idea. And it took me a while to understand what it means. But basically, if you are baking cupcakes and people come to you and say, Fionn, I'm going to pay you for those cupcakes for my next birthday party, congratulations, you have a business. But if you're sitting on the couch and you are dreaming about the cupcake company you're going to set up, that's, vice versa. That's the wrong approach, according to my dad. So somebody came to me and said they're going to give me money to do something. And I said that was fantastic. If not now, then when? So I jumped into it. And we broke down those installments. And it was a project where a mainland Chinese company, was setting up an operations in Hong Kong, and we were supposed to, help them up with marketing. We were supposed to help them up with training their employees. It was completely unrelated to what I'm doing now, but they knew I could handle the project. So we got on it. I hired the first month I worked in my living room in my underpants. The second month I hired a tiny office with 2 desks. We didn't have windows. Then I hired my first staff, local staff. He's still with me. He's still with me, and he's the most fantastic friend and partner in crime that you could imagine. So and then the company grew from there. The problem was that after 2 months or 3 months, I don't remember now correctly, but the guy ran out of money. So we provided the service, and we had 6 installments. He only paid us 2 or 3 installments, and then he ran out of money. So then, and I thought I've got half a year of security and I could figure out what to do next. I only had 1 client, and I jumped for my cupcake hustle, right? That's what you call hustle right now. I quit my job. So then the first year was pretty much figuring out how to sell more stuff and figuring out what is that stuff to sell. And it was tough, but the first year we broke even, we were fine. Second year was much tougher. It was really difficult because I had a bigger team, and it was tough. By the third year and second year, I actually already figured out that I need to focus on marketing and who are those people that are paying us and why are they coming to us? What do they need? What is niche in the market? You do it by trial and error. I'm sure there are tons of, and I studied business, and I know that you can put together a beautiful business plan. But in my experience, it just didn't work like that. Whatever you put on paper, you need to verify. You need to actually go out and do it. You need to get that experience. So for me, it was trial and error. So second year, we figured out it's going to be marketing in China. Third year, we figured out it's going to be exclusively social media marketing in China. And we also worked with a couple of really good companies early on. After the third year, we started getting business from word of mouth so much that we pretty much, we never did advertising or anything like that. So the business started really paying off. And the fourth, fifth year, so what I'm doing right now, we started building the personal brand and actually going out, setting another company, which is training company, diversifying business. So that was my journey. It's not very straightforward, and that's what a lot of business people realize. Some industries are different. Tech industry is very different in China right now. You can come in with a half-baked prototype. If it hits the right button, you're gonna get the money and you're gonna be speed-tracked in a year and a half to go through all these processes, ups and downs, and hiring teams and failing and succeeding and failing and succeeding in a year and a half. So that's one industry. Another industry is if you are in any kind of digital applications, and especially if it has some blockchain potential. There are a lot of blockchain companies that need real case examples, and again, they just throw money at you. And China is very big on that. So it's not cryptocurrencies and stuff, right? I once again want to highlight that. It's really blockchain technology. So they throw money at you and they just say, okay, just make sure that your solution actually utilizes our technology, because we need to show real case examples. There are people that start in traditional industries like sourcing or manufacturing. And I know a couple of people. Manufacturing in China for foreigners just does not work. I had several friends that set up, they spent millions of US dollars setting up factories, hiring 80 people, starting manufacturing stuff, and then 4 months later, the chief engineer steals the technology, goes somewhere else and produces, stuff that's much better, or sabotages your manufacturing. So all those things, all these horror stories, I also know and heard, and it happens. So traditional industries work very different. You need very strong guanxi. You need to make sure that you have the right partners. And if you want to start it all by yourself, I would never advise doing that. In terms of service and provision of services, you need to be a real expert, and you need to go through trials and errors. And if you are in new tech, anything to do with technology, digital solutions, bots, the little robots, right? The little, whatever it is, that kind of stuff, move to Shenzhen, make sure that you have a working prototype, just get some money, just do it. You will have a hell of a life, in a bad way, for a year and a half, but at least you will know. If you succeed, you succeed. If you fail fast. So that's China and Hong Kong.
If people are looking to find more of your work, whether it's to read your book, to listen to your videos, to check out your materials, to contact you, to reach out, to maybe work with you, what's the best place online to find you?
LinkedIn is my most loved social media platform. I'm on LinkedIn under Ashley Galina Dudarenok. I've got a YouTube channel called Ashley Talks China. My book is on Amazon. It's called Unlocking the World's Largest E-Market. So I'm sure you're going to put links below, so guys connect. LinkedIn is my favorite platform, and I can be reached via email as well at ashley@chouzan.co.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Ashley. Thank you so much.
I'm a hugger. Oh. Thank you.
That's the first hug. I love it.
Oh, I'm a hugger.